So we have this opportunity to listen to the teachings, especially about this text by Aryadeva called the 400, which is quite a profound text. And we're lucky to live in a world, in an environment where this text has been written and passed down through the years, and even where it's been translated into English, and where commentators have written about it to explain it, and that's been translated. So it's really quite a privilege to be introduced to material like this that you're not going to get exposed to in our ordinary public school system, and probably not in university either, unless you have quite a special professor. So let's take advantage of this opportunity, learn as much as we can, even if not everything is totally clear to us. And know that that's part of the process of creating imprints in our mind, familiarizing ourselves with the Dharma slowly, consistently, over time, for the benefit of all living beings. Because as we learn the Dharma, our mental capacity increases, our wisdom increases. We're able to be of greater benefit to others in the present, and also as we approach Buddhahood, able to be of great benefit to them at that time. So with that kind of perspective, let's listen to the teachings this evening.
Welcome to the conference call. Perfect. Only organizers can be heard.
Good. Okay, so we did our motivation, and we'll start in with the teaching now. This is very important when you're approaching the Buddha's teachings, to realize that it's not taught the same way other material is taught. In other words, when you go to school, you're supposed to remember what the teacher said and tell them what they already know on a test. Right? And it doesn't really matter if you understand it or if you benefit from it. You just have to know how to give the teacher what they want. Okay? And then afterwards you're free to forget it. As long as you have the sheet of paper that proves that you learned it. Right? So here, education is a bit different. First of all, we aren't expected to remember or understand everything all at once on the first go. There's very much this idea of repeatedly learning the material, of each time we hear it, the imprints, go in our mind in a deeper way. At the beginning, we have to learn just the vocabulary. That's hard enough for us. And then after that, we start getting some idea of the concepts. And only after that do we have enough to even start thinking about the concepts, and then after that maybe we understand a little bit, but we're basically confused about the whole thing because it's not like anything else we were ever taught. Yeah? Were you ever taught anything like the Dharma in your education? You know? Maybe a little bit about loving kindness, be nice to people. But, did you hear teachings about non-inherent existence when you were a kid? When you went to university, did you hear anything about the types of phenomena and the categories of mental factors and the levels of mind? Oh, so this is all new stuff to us that we're just, getting familiar with right now. So it's going to take some time. Yeah. What is important is that we put effort into learning. So people have different ways of learning. Some people learn by hearing, some by seeing, some by doing. Some people like to take notes, other people don't. Yeah. Some people like to listen to the talk once without taking notes, then go back and take notes. Yeah. If you're going to meditate on the material, having something written can be very helpful because you may not remember all the major points at the end. Okay? So you have to kind of decide for yourself how much energy you're going to put into it. And according to the energy you put into it, that's the extent of of what you reap. How well you understand it. So if you don't take notes, or if you do take them, but you don't review them, and then the next week you're lost, then that's kind of our responsibility, isn't it? Yeah. So, it's up to us to put in the energy and to realize that we're not going to understand everything all at once. This is really new material, and it's not always easy. If it were easy, we would have been Buddhas a long, long time ago. Yeah? So the basic thing is to feel really happy that we have this opportunity, and then to make use of it and realize that we will understand something. Yeah? That not everything is going to be a blur. I remember one section of J. Rinpoche's special insight chapter in the Great Exposition about the difference between the Svatantrikas and Prasangikas. And one of Betsy Napper was saying, maybe a few Geshis understand what they're talking about. And I thought, that's nice. I understood the word vase. So I understood something, because they always use bumpa, which means vase or pot, as an example. So, okay, I understood that. The rest, slowly, slowly. Okay? Yeah. So you start where you're at. Okay, so we're on chapter 8 of this text. It has 16 chapters, and the title of the present chapter, let me read it to you here, starts with verse 175. Showing the methods of fully training the student's mind stream, making it receptive to the development of spiritual paths. Okay, so we've already talked about various misconceptions our mind has. For example, seeing things that are impermanent, that change moment by moment, as permanent, in other words, as static and unchanging. Seeing things that are by nature unsatisfactory as pleasurable and blissful. Seeing things that are foul as pure, and seeing things that lack a self as having a self. So we've been through the chapters talking about that. And then we've also talked a little bit about, the path and what Buddhahood is and how to subdue the afflictions by applying the different kinds of antidotes to them. And so now, this is the last chapter before he's going to get into the really nitty-gritty stuff where he's talking about the nature of reality. Okay, so we start introducing us here to, he's talking a lot, Aryadeva is talking a lot about how it is that afflictions can be eliminated. Okay, and this is a very important topic because if we don't believe that our mental afflictions can be eliminated and subdued, then we won't try to eliminate and subdue them. Yeah? So if we think that our anger and our greed and our insecurity and so on are inherent parts of us, that those qualities are always there, that they're in the nature of our mind, then we won't even try and get rid of them. Yeah? And then we'll probably have a very pessimistic view of life, thinking that, well, these things are a part of me, I can't do anything, so I'm, going to be tortured by these mental afflictions my entire life. And then we just kind of throw up our hands and reach for a bottle of booze. Mm-hmm. Yeah, something to medicate the pain. So that's why this chapter of really seeing that the afflictions can be eliminated is so important, because when we have some feeling, that they can be, then we have a whole different perspective on life. Yeah, we realize that our faults, that our emotions, that our mental drama is not who we are. Yeah, we see that these things are like an overlay on the pure nature of the mind, that they haven't penetrated into the nature of the mind. Yeah, so they can be eliminated. Yeah. Last week we began to see that, the afflictions are unstable because their objects are unstable. In other words, one person will find one object, one person will see this recorder as wonderful and as something that's very beautiful and attractive and generate attachment to it. Somebody else is going to look at the same object and say, what? Who can use that? Toss it away, and have aversion towards it. So from the side of the object, the fact that people can have such disparate reactions to it shows that the afflictions are not inherently existent. Because if they were, then everybody should see everything in the same way all the time. Yeah? And they don't. Okay? So that's showing something about our afflictions. They're unstable. Yeah. And then we also began discussing last time about this whole thing of conceptuality. That conceptuality has a few different meanings. One meaning is just labeling things and how things exist in dependence upon having a name and a label. But another meaning of conceptuality ties into this mental factor of inappropriate attention and ties into seeing changeable things as static and things that are foul as beautiful and so on. In other words, this kind of conceptuality puts an overlay on objects. Okay? It imputes things on qualities or traits on objects that it doesn't have, or exaggerates things that it does have. And then, as a reaction, our mind gets all whacked out about something that we ourselves have projected and created. Okay? And this happens all the time in our lives, and we're usually not even aware of it, because whatever we project on things, we believe is true. We never doubt it. And so without, we doubt the Buddha's teachings. That's the wrong kind of doubt. But we don't doubt what our mind thinks, which is why I titled the book, Don't Believe Everything You Think. Because sometimes what we think, believe it or not, is pretty nutty. And you can begin to see this. We're starting retreat now. What you'll see in retreat is, our daily schedule is pretty much the same. Yeah, you're doing the same things at the same time. You're seeing the same people every day. You're not speaking, so there's not a whole lot of new information and stuff going on. But one day you will look at somebody and say, what a kind, wonderful person. And the next day you will look at them and go, I can't stand them. Get me away. Yeah. When they eat, they click their spoon on the bowl, and they make noise when they put their cup lid on. And don't they know we're supposed to do everything in silence? And look what they're doing. They're driving me crazy. Yeah. And when your mind is doing that, you brought about the topic of the judgmental mind. When we have those kind of projections on people, we completely think they're 100% true. 100%, Similarly, when we see somebody that we're attracted to, we think that they are attractive from their own side. Yeah, this is what they call falling in love. Yeah? Yeah, you think, oh, finally, this wonderful person showed up. They're 100% perfect. Yeah? Aren't they? Aren't they? When you first meet him, 100% perfect, everything you wanted. And if there was some bad quality they had, you know that they'll change because they love you so much. Yeah, they love you so much that they'll change that bad quality, right? Yeah? Yeah. And then as time goes on, then what happens? They change? You mean they didn't leave their clothes lying around the place when you first met them, and all of a sudden they start leaving their clothes lying around the place? Or that when you first met them, you overlooked the fact that they were a slob? Yeah, because you love them so much. They're not a slob. Anyway, I love them. I'll pick up after them. This is no problem. Yeah? And then, a year later, or 2 years later, it's like, can't they pick up anything? Who do they think I am? They're made. Right? And then you go, how come they all of a sudden got this bad quality that they didn't have at the beginning? Yeah? We think, oh, it all of a sudden popped up. They never had it before. Actually, they had it all along. We just ignored. We painted over. We didn't see. Yeah? So this kind of conceptuality in which we project what isn't there on things and then get so reactive, this is causing us a lot of difficulty. But if we can notice this dynamic in our mind, then we can again see that afflictions can be eradicated because all these projections that our mental factor of inappropriate attention is putting out there are just fabrications from our own mind. They don't exist on the object. Okay? So we begin to question a lot of our judgments and opinions. Yeah? And then in that way begin to see that our afflictions can be eliminated. Because we're painting pictures all the time. Yeah? We thought we weren't an artist, but we paint beauty on things that aren't beautiful. We paint, horrible qualities on things that aren't fearful. Yeah? We paint true existence on things that don't exist from their own side with their own essence. We're painting things all the time, and we're screenwriters. We're creative writers, writing dramas all the time. Look what this person did to me. Nobody loves me. I could tell by the way they walked past me on retreat and didn't even look up and smile. Nobody loves me. Yeah. Like we were saying, even the stink bugs. Yeah. So, this is all conceptuality. So, this whole, the whole emotional drama is coming from our screenwriting ability or disability. Yeah. Okay. So, now we're going to go on to verse 179, which is again refuting, the reason that somebody gives why afflictions can't be abandoned. So we have this figure called Joblo. That's his English name. In Tibetan, his name is Kachik, which literally translates as one mouth. So Big Mouth says, one big mouth says, we'll just call him Joe Blow for short. He says, since men and women are bound together by mutual desire, we can't give up the object of attraction and we can't give up desire. Sounds right, huh? This is what society's telling us. If you're gay, then they tell you, gay people are bound by mutual attraction. You can't give it up. Whatever it is, we're told that, yeah, there it is. So no way you can give up desire. Yeah. So Aryadeva says, none is, as it were, bound to another. It is unfeasible to separate that which is bound together. Okay? So none is, as it were, bound to another. In other words, people are not bound to each other. Men and women are not inherently bound to each other. Yeah. If they were, the divorce rate wouldn't be so high. Yeah. If they were, they couldn't be separated, but people are separated. Okay? And so, just in the same way that you may have a black ox and a white ox that are bound together by a yoke, yeah, you have two people that are bound together by craving. But that doesn't mean that there's no way to overcome the craving and nothing that can be done about it. Okay? So craving also binds sense objects and sense organs together. Yeah? We look at something we develop craving towards it, and then it's as if our sense organs are bound to that object. We want to continue having contact with it. Right? Yeah? Then the next verse is, it is about the lack of contradiction in seeing many who have not abandoned afflictions. So here, Job Lowe says, if afflictions are stopped by analyzing in this way, why haven't people abandoned them? You know, in other words, if you've analyzed the object and you can see that not everybody reacts towards it the same way, if you've looked at conceptuality and see how you create things, if you see that, you know, people are not inherently bound together, then why are people still having so much afflictions and so much attachment and desire and craving and clinging? You know, people should have eliminated all that already. Okay, so that's what Job Lowe's saying. Okay. Aryadeva says, those with little merit do not even doubt this doctrine. Entertaining just a doubt tears to tatters worldly existence. Okay, so this actually is a very famous verse. You will encounter this verse a lot. Yeah, many other commentators quote this verse. Okay? So those with little merit do not even doubt this doctrine. So people who don't have much merit don't even explore the way things exist. They just take the way things appear to them for granted and think that's the way they are. You know, they never explore it. Yeah, they never ask, who am I really? They never ask, what is my mind? How do things really exist? And that's because they have little merit. Okay? So that doesn't mean that they can never do that. If they accumulate merit and, you know, have some exposure to the Dharma and so on, they may start asking these questions and exploring these things. Okay? But entertaining just a doubt tears to tatters worldly existence. Yeah? So if we have even some doubt that, gee, maybe things don't exist the way they appear, you know, or some doubt of, you know, how do I really exist? You know, what is this I really? Yeah, even having that doubt is very beneficial because it will push us to explore. It will push us to learn more. So even though it's a doubt, even though we're confused, even though we don't understand anything, this kind of doubt it's a curiosity and it'll push us in the right direction. You know? So over time it'll really bear fruit. So because they lack a strong belief in the profound teachings, those people with little merit don't even have a doubt about the two truths, the way Nagarjuna explained them. In other words, the conventional truth of the things that function, you know, and exist around us, and the ultimate truth, their deeper mode of existence. So most people, you know, they don't even think about these things. Yeah? I mean, when you were little, did your parents say, you know, teach you about conventional ultimate truth? You know? Or did they just say, you know, get a good education, make a lot of money, marry somebody nice, have a bunch of kids, be rich and famous and artistic and creative, whatever their thing was they wanted you to be? Yeah? Okay, so, so this whole thing about the two truths that most people don't have a doubt about is that while things arise dependently, they lack any existence from their own side, any inherent nature. oh, this one likes me. On my head. He's a fly? What is he?
A little fly.
It's a fly. No, it feels like a big fly. The stink bugs don't like me, but a fly loves me. Oh, I'm needed and wanted. Okay, so that while dependent arising is empty of inherent existence, actions and agents and cause and effect and all these things still function. In other words, when we search for things to find out what they really are, we can't find anything we can draw a line around, and say that's what it really is. And yet, when we don't search, things still exist and function. Yeah. So it's not the thing that nothing exists. Things do exist. But also, it's not that they have their own essence, that they're solid and concrete and exist out there objectively unrelated to our mind. Okay? So, most people don't understand it, they don't think about it, and as a result, they don't even think about, eliminating afflictions, attaining liberation. They don't even think that even a liberation is possible. Yeah? And, that's kind of the way our society is. Yeah? I mean, even you go to therapists for help when you're confused. They help you on one level, with your personal problems and so on. And that's good and important work. But, the therapist doesn't know about the two truths and dependent arising and emptiness. So, yeah, they help, but it's not it is not going on that deep level. Okay? So when emptiness is taught, simply entertaining a positive doubt that it might be like this tears samsara to tatters, since to some extent the fundamental nature of existence has become the mind's object. So just the fact that you're thinking about this is already fantastic. Okay? So somebody with positive doubt will seek certainty, and by ascertaining the correct view through using reasoning, through scriptural quotations, then they'll eventually gain inference into reality, then they'll gain the direct perception into reality, then they'll meditate on it repeatedly and cleanse their mind of all defilements and to attain liberation. Okay? So liberation can be attained. And even just thinking about it, when you think about that, it tears samsara to tatters. You think that, we've been in samsara, cyclic existence, since beginningless time. Yeah, and in how many lives have we ever heard about the Dharma or investigated the nature of reality? Yeah, well, if we look around us just on planet Earth, considering not just the people, but all the animals and insects, of all the living beings on planet Earth, how many are thinking about the nature of reality? Not so many, We have gazillions of ants and wasps on our land, and it's just a small little piece of land. Yeah, none of them are. I mean, really, when you consider the number of living beings in the world, it's, those who can think about such thing, very rare. So, that way we can understand that just thinking about it is actually something quite special. Yeah? Okay, so that was verse 180. That's one of the famous verses. This chapter has a few famous verses. Okay. Okay, then verse 181 is about advice to understand the meaning of emptiness. So this is advice to take interest in the meaning of the fundamental mode of existence. So Aryadeva says, the subduer said of this doctrine, there will be increase until liberation. Anyone who lacks interest in it clearly has no sense. Aryadeva doesn't pull punches. You know, when you're being foolish, he tells you. Okay? So Buddha here was saying that from the first moment of the path of seeing. The path of seeing is when you have direct perception of emptiness. From that moment where you have direct perception of the nature of reality until you attain liberation or until you attain full awakening, there will be no decline and only increase in your direct perception of emptiness. Okay, and then all the other virtuous qualities that you practice together with the meditation on emptiness also will increase. Okay, so practicing generosity or giving conjoined with this wisdom will also increase. Practicing ethical conduct in conjunction with thinking about emptiness and dependent arising, that will only increase. Yeah, so all your virtuous qualities, keep growing bigger and bigger after you get to that point where you have that initial direct perception of reality. So therefore, anyone who lacks interest in the meaning of emptiness clearly has no sense. You know, if this is the method to increase our good qualities, to, lead us from this tumultuous world where we're thrown around by our afflictions, we're subjected to birth, aging, sickness, and death, and we have no interest in learning about this. It's like somebody who's dying and they have no interest in taking any medicine. Yeah? Or put it this way, somebody, that wasn't such a good example, somebody who has a curable disease who has no interest in taking any medicine. Yeah, somebody who has an incurable one, sign off on the medicine, let yourself relax, okay? So the wise should take an interest in thinking about emptiness. Worldly practice comes to an end once worldly practices and their results come to an end once they've yielded their fruit. So for example, if you're generous but your motivation is I want to give somebody a present because they'll like me, then it's generosity, it's nice, but it doesn't really create much merit and it's not going to have a whole lot of lasting impact. If you give somebody something with the Dharma motivation, if I want to do this so that in a future rebirth I'll be wealthy, that's a Dharma motivation, but it's as soon as you have that rebirth and experience the result of being wealthy because of your generosity, then that karma's brought its result and it's finished. Okay? Whereas if we have the motivation to attain liberation or attain full awakening, then the benefit from whatever action we do will not be consumed until we attain that goal. So that's why we start out all our meditation sessions, generating bodhicitta, generating the aspiration to attain full awakening. Yeah. So even if it's artificial, even if it's fabricated bodhicitta, again, we're thinking about something good. We're getting our mind going in the right direction. Okay. So worldly practices come to an end once they bear their fruit, but the understanding of emptiness leads the practices of generosity, ethical conduct, fortitude, and so on, to omniscience. Yeah, those practices will never finish bearing their results. So contemplating emptiness is like chocolate. It should always be savored. Yeah? Aryadeva didn't say that. I changed one of Galsup Jay's quotes. Okay, then verse 182 is showing the need to understand emptiness in order to attain liberation. So Joe Blow says, do you meditate on emptiness although things aren't empty in order to free yourself from desire? Or do you view them as empty because they actually are empty? Okay, so Joe Blow is saying, even though things aren't empty of inherent existence, do you meditate and pretend that they are, or are they really? What do you think of Joe Blow?
Just like this. Yeah.
Not so smart, huh? Okay, so Aryadeva says, one does not regard that which is not empty as empty, thinking thereby to gain nirvana. Tathagatas say that nirvana will not be attained through wrong views. Okay? Yeah? Because, it could happen that some people think they misunderstand what emptiness is, and they think that emptiness means non-existence, which it doesn't mean. And so then maybe they think, oh, well, things aren't really non-existent, but you just pretend they are, because then that helps you not to be so attached to them, and that will lead you to liberation. And Aryadeva is saying, no, that's just cultivating a wrong view, and wrong view is never going to lead you to anything good. Okay, so, so that once you have an understanding of that which is empty as empty, in other words, you've understood things correctly, then familiarize yourself with it. It's not that you regard what isn't empty as empty, thinking that nirvana will be attained by meditating on emptiness. Doesn't make any sense. Yeah, because you have to meditate. If our problem is ignorance, you have to generate the wisdom that is the opposite of ignorance in order to be liberated. Yeah. So you're going to have to develop the wisdom that knows things as they truly are, as they really are, because ignorance doesn't know them how they really are. But if you meditate on the wrong idea, then that's not going to get you anywhere, is it? Because it's just creating more misunderstanding, more misconception in the mind. Okay? In addition, if somebody thinks that you just meditate on emptiness even though things aren't empty, what they're essentially thinking is that then things inherently exist. So they're grasping onto inherent existence. So then they think, oh yes, everything really is an objective entity out there, unrelated to my mind. And so that's clearly the wrong idea, and impossible to gain liberation with that kind of notion. So no matter which of the three vehicles nirvana you aspire for, whether you want to be a hero, a solitary realizer, or a Buddha, you have to learn the meaning of emptiness. So that's why this verse is showing the need to understand emptiness in order to attain liberation. Then verse 183 is about showing the means to turn away from samsara. So Joe Blow says, okay, if things are empty, so Joe Blow says, okay, if things are empty, it's appropriate to teach suchness or emptiness. Okay, but what use is teaching how the world of sentient beings and the environments comes into existence? So Joe Blow's saying, okay, if things are really empty, yeah, it makes some sense to teach emptiness. Yeah? That will lead us to liberation. But why in the world do we have to learn about precious room in life, and death, and refuge, and karma, and the sufferings of cyclic existence, and bodhicitta, and the kindness of sentient beings, and love and compassion? Why do we have to learn about all of that? That's what he's saying. Especially he's saying, why do we have to learn the Four Noble Truths? Why do we have to learn the 12 links that describe how we're reborn in samsara? Okay, so Aryadeva says, whatever contains teaching about the world speaks of engagement. Whatever contains elucidation of the ultimate speaks of disengagement. Okay, so what he's meaning here is that emptiness, and again, emptiness doesn't mean non-existence, it means the lack of inherent existence. Emptiness can't be understood without first having an explanation of how samsara comes into being. Okay, so scripture's teaching about how ignorance causes karma, karma brings about consciousness brings about name and form brings about the six sources. In other words, the whole 12 links that describe how we take rebirth in samsara. Okay, so scripture's teaching about that, and the world of sentient beings and in their environments describe the stages of engaging in samsara. Okay, they're telling us how our predicament comes about. Okay, now why is that important? Why do we have to learn how our predicament comes about? Yeah, well, first of all, it helps us generate renunciation. Yeah, if we don't really study the Four Noble Truths, if we don't understand how ignorance and anger and attachment creates karma, how karma brings about unsatisfactory conditions, if we don't understand that, we're not going to have any wish to be free of it. And without any wish to be free of it, we're not going to learn the way to be free. Okay? So it's kind of, it's like if you don't understand how you got in prison, and if you think prison is kind of an okay place, though not perfect, then you're just going to never think of how to get out. Yeah? Which is a big loss, isn't it? Okay, so another reason why we study, the Four Noble Truths and how the whole evolution of samsara is because it also helps us to refute wrong conceptions regarding arising or production. Okay, and so refuting these kind of wrong conceptions is something that is a preliminary to understanding emptiness. Because as long as we have some really gross wrong conceptions about how our predicament of being born in samsara comes about. As long as we have gross wrong conceptions about that, there's no way we're ever going to understand emptiness, because emptiness is the very subtle nature of reality. Okay? So learning the 12 links, the Four Noble Truths, okay, that helps us to refute belief in 3 wrong views of how our predicament comes about. So one wrong view is that it's caused by a creator. Yeah, it's caused by an external God or external being. A second is that it's completely causeless and random. And a third is that it's caused by incompatible causes. In other words, things that don't have the ability to produce samsara, we think produce samsara. For example, thinking there's one cosmic mind, or there's one primal substance, or something like that. All sorts of wrong views like this. Okay. So, excuse me, I'm having some problems with my nose tonight. It's not cooperating. Okay, so so let's look at these wrong views. Yeah, so one of them, when we study Four Noble Truths and dependent arising, we see that rebirth, which includes all of the unsatisfactory conditions that we experience, aging, sickness, death, having problems, not getting what we want and being disillusioned, getting what we want and losing it. Okay, we see that all of that comes from karma, and that karma arises from our mental afflictions, and that our mental afflictions are rooted in this fundamental ignorance that grasps at inherent existence. Okay? And so just, understanding that even you don't completely understand what ignorance is, and you don't understand completely what it grasps at, you do know that your problems are not caused by external beings, including flies. Okay? So you begin to see that your situation is not brought about by a creator. Okay? So this is really important to understand, because as long as we think that there's a creator deity that is the source of our situation, we're grasping onto a completely wrong idea. Okay? Because just the notion of a creator deity, okay, many faiths think, well, the deity is permanent. Yeah, God doesn't have a cause. Right? God doesn't have a cause. So God is permanent. God doesn't change. Well, how can something that doesn't change create anything? Because creation involves changing. Right? Yeah, for something to arise, something else has to change. Okay, but if you say that God can't change, then how can God create? Yeah. And then you get into other questions like, if God created, why did He create the way things are? And you're usually told so that we could find God or generate wisdom or something. But again, if God is a creator, He could have created us so we didn't have to go through all this stuff to find wisdom and find God to start with. Or you hear God created you because He was lonely. Well, how is God a perfect being if He's lonely and needs people's companionship? Anyway, we're not very good companions, are we? Yeah? Okay, so the idea is that if you really examine things closely, the notion of an external creator really becomes untenable. There's no way you can really support it. Now, this kind of thing may have been what brought us to Buddhism to start with, that, we may have had difficulties with the religion we grew up in because of this idea of God. But also, that idea of God got imprinted in our mind when we were kids. And so we often have to really work at seeing how it's, kind of hidden in different cracks and corners of our mind at different times. Okay? And then, again, bring it up and really examine it. Is it possible that, there is a creator? I heard, one of Donna, one of our friends, told us this story. She's a teacher at middle school, and one of the students died in a car accident. And so the parents of some of his friends were, trying to explain to these little kids about, why their friend died. And one parent said, well, God took him away. And then the little kid said, well, I don't like God if he takes my friends away. Of course, the parent meant it as some way of calming the child's anxiety. God's in charge and must have had some reason. But the child, was smart. And like, who would want to be around a creator like that? Okay? So, really, if you have some belief in an external creator, really digging in there and, is it actually possible? Does it make any sense? Okay, a second wrong belief is that things arise causelessly, that our samsara arose randomly. So somebody, maybe somebody who studied science or whatever, or mathematics, just says, well, it's just random. Although it's interesting because science really believes in cause and effect, so they would, okay, that's going to come in the next wrong view. Let's deal with this, the person that says it's random, okay? Things happen randomly. Things happen without cause. Does that make any sense? If things happen without cause, why do you eat food to stop being hungry? Why do you put gas in your car to make it go? If things happen randomly without cause, why would we do anything? I mean, because you look at, most of our actions, we do them because we want to attain certain results. But if things happen causelessly, we wouldn't need to do anything. Because it could come about, just like that. Then a third wrong view is that our samsara comes about because of discordant causes. A discordant cause is something that doesn't really have the power to bring about that result. So, for example, in ancient India, there were different philosophical traditions. Some of them have some ideas in common with different things people believe nowadays. For example, there was one tradition that says there's this kind of primal substance, and everything was created out of this primal substance, and then after it ceases, dissolves back into the primal substance. Or a modern day counterpart counterpart would be? Like there's one cosmic universal substance and everything comes out of it and dissolves into it? Or there's one cosmic universal mind and sentient beings come out of it, and then when we die we dissolve back into that universal mind? You know, you hear these kinds of ideas. Yeah? Well, this is an example of another wrong view that thinks a discordant cause can produce samsara. Because, you know, there's no cosmic mind that can produce samsara. There's no primal substance that, you know, out of which everything originates and flows back into. Okay? So the idea is that as long as we haven't really understood conventional existence and how things arise conventionally, especially how birth, aging, sickness, and death arise conventionally, without having that idea, then how are we, how are we going to understand emptiness? Because we're going to have all sorts of wrong ideas about how our situation arose. Are you getting what I'm saying? Yeah? Okay? So if we go back to that verse, yeah, Aryadeva said, whatever contains teaching about the world speaks of engagement. So there he's saying, you know, that the teachings that talk about the world of samsara are teaching us how the evolution of samsara, how we engage, you know, or how we become engaged with all these difficulties. Whatever contains elucidation of the ultimate speaks of disengagement. In other words, the teachings that talk about the ultimate nature, the ultimate reality, the ultimate truth, are teaching us how to disengage with samsara, how to overcome the fundamental ignorance that lies at the root of our predicament. Okay? So to, you know, answer, coming back to Job Low's question about, well, why are we studying all this stuff anyway? Why don't we just study emptiness? It's because it helps us understand emptiness. Okay? So that's important to understand. Yeah, otherwise you think, why do I have to learn all these things? I don't want to hear about suffering. I don't want to hear about death. I don't want to hear about refuge. I just want to hear about the ultimate nature and realize it. Yeah, well, it's a nice aspiration, but your path will be much better if you take the time to realize, you know, to understand how things are, samsara, cyclic existence, arises conventionally, and to generate some renunciation that wants to be free from it. Okay, questions, comments? Yeah.
I have a question in relation to 182 about the wrong views. How do we know whether the way we're trying to understand or get a better feeling for emptiness, how do we determine whether we're leaning towards the wrong view or not? There's a couple of exercises that I do to kind of try to loosen up this feeling that we have that, you know, everything's so solid.
Yeah.
How do you know that you're not leaning towards something that's not right?
Right, okay. So how do you know that your understanding of emptiness is progressing in the right direction? You keep studying, you keep thinking about what you study, you keep meditating on it. Yeah? And so especially with the study, you see if what you're learning from the Buddha, what you're learning from the great sages, is actually what you're thinking about. Yeah? Or if what you're thinking about is taking you off into your own philosophy of what things exist and how it exists. Yeah? That's the best way to do it, you know, is just to rely on the people who have that realization and see on a gross level, if your ideas concord with theirs, and then to really go deeper and really try and understand their ideas, and again see if what you're thinking is concording with them. And then to the ultimate way is to meditate on it and see if you get the result. Yeah, but this is one of the reasons why we always go and hear teachings again and again and again. Yeah, and why, His Holiness teaches, and all these Geshis who can teach the same text all go to listen to His Holiness again. Yeah, because each time you hear it, it goes in a different way. Yeah?
If the flame happens into form,
Pardon me?
based on causes and conditions, correct?
I didn't hear you.
Flame.
A flame?
Appears.
Yeah.
It wasn't there or not there. It's when you see it. Because it causes and conditions.
Yeah.
Cause of oxygen means
Right.
The level of consciousness, you dissolve this this form or whatever that you're here, and you're trying to say, okay, you're empty of inherent existence. You dissolve that. Does your awareness still stick around?
So you're...
The flame is gone. The flame is still there. It's just not. You can't see it. But the cause of this still can exist for it to come back. And it's not the same flame moment to moment. Is that how you were?
So what is your analogy? That the flame is like ignorance, and ignorance can come back?
Like your gross level of consciousness is the appearance of the flame. The causes and conditions for you to be have to be there for you to be.
Right.
And they're maintained.
Yeah.
Okay. So you lose gross form.
You mean like when you die?
Voidness. What happens?
Okay, when you lose gross form, when we die, yeah, I mean,
Flame goes out.
yeah, you move out, your body's dead, okay. The body has its own series of causes and conditions. It decomposes and goes back into the ground and so on. And then the consciousness is a different nature than the body. While the body is material, the consciousness isn't. Yeah, but one moment of consciousness causes the next moment of consciousness. So there's a continuity of consciousness after it separates from the body. And where this consciousness is reborn, and as what kind of living being this consciousness, is born into, what kind of, realm it takes, that's caused by our previous actions, our karma.
Okay, but now we eliminate the ignorance and replace it with...
Okay, when you eliminate the ignorance...
What happens is, obviously you're going to cut the consciousness.
When you eliminate the ignorance, it stops the rebirth under the influence of afflictions and karma, but it doesn't stop the continuity of the clear and aware nature of consciousness. Okay? So the clear and aware nature of consciousness can exist without ignorance existing.
Do you have to experience that in a form and lifetime to be able to continue that, or is that something that...
What do you mean?
To maintain the moment from moment to moment.
To maintain just the existence of consciousness moment to moment?
Consciousness is part of the 12 links. Now we've eliminated that.
No, there's different ways of consciousness. The third link consciousness, okay, is going to get eliminated because the third link consciousness is the one that's under the influence of afflictions and karma.
So the subtle energy that's
But
left.
consciousness in general, the clear and aware nature of the mind, yeah, that is there with ignorance on top of it. The ignorance can get eliminated, but that clear and aware nature of mind continues.
And that doesn't require rebirth.
No.
Reincarnation is a choice.
No. And that's what nirvana is the cessation of rebirth under the influence of karma and afflictions. Yeah. When you practice the bodhisattva path, then you want to be able to make emanations in samsara in order to benefit other living beings. But that is different than taking rebirth under the influence of karma and afflictions. Okay? Yeah.
Question, or verse 182,
Mm-hmm.
especially the second half of it, how does that relate to the fact that we have the different tenet systems?
Okay. So Tathagatas say that nirvana will not be attained through wrong views, and yet the Buddha taught all these different tenet systems. And one time, to one person he says there's a self, to another person he says there's no self, to another person he says there's a foundation consciousness, to another person he says there isn't. This is because the Buddha is a skillful teacher, and in order to lead people in a skillful way, he has to teach them according to where they're at. So according to people's different mentalities and dispositions, he said different things in order to get them to progressively be able to develop their ideas. Okay? Because if the Buddha taught everybody the emptiness of inherent existence at the beginning, some people would misunderstand it and freak out and go to the nihilistic extreme, and that would be really counterproductive. So to avoid that, then he taught, different things. So it's just, it's kind of like, when you're on vacation with your parents, driving in the car across country, and you're a little kid, and are we there yet? Do you remember that? How long until we can get out of the car? And mom and dad don't say, well, we're going to drive 200 miles today and we'll be there by the evening. They say, oh, we're going to stop for a snack in about 10 minutes. Oh, good, okay. And so we go, we stop for a snack, and then we get back in the car, and we feel better, and then we ride a bit longer, and then when are we going to be there? And again, they don't tell us, well, now it's 150 miles. They say, oh, we're going to stop for lunch soon. Yeah? And so our parents are very skillful, telling us what we need to hear at a certain time to keep us going, so we don't just, start screeching in the back seat. Yeah. So in the same way, the Buddha teaches people, according to what they need to hear at a certain time, that will gradually lead them. Yeah, and so when you see things in that way, then the existence of other religions, even though we may refute their views, the existence of these other religions is important because they meet the needs of other people and they're productive and good for these other people. Yeah, so that's why we never say everybody has to be a Buddhist and have my view within Buddhism, but we say, you get something, choose something that helps you. Yeah, and then you can, slowly improve and get better.
I just want to ask about the terms then.
Uh-huh.
So all the Buddhists believe in the Four Seals.
Yeah.
Ones who are thinking about that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But then you would still call these the lower school's ideas wrong views, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but they're leading. But they aren't actually. You wouldn't call all of the views of the lower schools wrong views. You would call them incomplete views, because the lower schools do refute the existence of a permanent, partless, independent self. That is not a wrong view. That is a correct view. And so you study those tenet systems and you refute that, and that helps you.
So when they're saying, you're wrong nihilistic, because that's what everybody accuses each other of, they're actually not saying it's a wrong view in a way, it's just incomplete.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, their views are incomplete. Yeah, because it's like, there's different layers of wrong conception. They're getting rid of one, and that's a right view that they have that's getting rid of that one. But they're still leaving some others behind. Okay? And even the Chittamatra view, which takes you way off into left field, it's still something that's helpful because the Chittamatrans are introducing the idea of selflessness of phenomena. Even though the Prasangikas refute that view, it's still introducing it, and that's beneficial, and that's why that tenet system is considered higher than the Sautantrikas. Okay?
There's a question from John Owen. He says, I'm a little confused about the refutation of causelessness.
About the
refutation of causelessness.
Okay.
Even though we do things in order to affect changes, how does it follow from that our experiences, like being born as a human or getting hit by a drunk driver, are caused by karma?
Oh, okay. So, so some cause and effect we can see, you know. You can see if you eat food, you're going to feel full. Yeah. So he's basically asking, what about the cause and effect that we can't see? For example, that generosity leads to wealth and ethical conduct leads to a good rebirth. Okay. So some people say that is something that you you gain conviction in through the inference by the power of authority. Okay? In other words, that it's something the Buddha said, and what the Buddha said is reliable because he hasn't contradicted himself in other statements, because other things that he said you can validate because what he said doesn't go against obvious things, you know, and doesn't go against other inferences that you can tell where things are true. So for that reason, you have a confidence in the Buddha, and that's using inference by the power of authority to accept that, you know, good rebirth is caused by ethical conduct. But aside from that, you know, there's that reason. But aside from that, if you think about it, okay, the Buddha called causes that lead to happiness virtue. And he called actions that lead to unhappiness non-virtue. So virtue and non-virtue are not inherently existent. They have those terms dependent on the result that they bring. Okay? So certain causes were called virtue because, you know, a Buddha was able to see that they bring happiness. And even to our common samsaric mind, we may not see, oh yes, that person did that in that lifetime and it brought this result in this lifetime. But it makes sense to us, just on a basic level, that if you're a good person, you're going to have happy results. You know, I mean, our parents say, be nice to other kids and they'll be nice to you. You know, so, yeah, you act ethically, you're going to have happy results. You give things, you're a generous person, people are going to help you out. It makes sense even in a common way to us, even though we can't see the exact karma that somebody did that brought this result and thus have complete conviction in it with our own direct perception. Okay?
And that inference from scriptural authority is
Yeah.
real inference, like
Yeah.
solid.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's as solid as you can get. Yeah, I'm sure somebody might still try and poke holes in it. But still, you know, it has to be said by somebody who's valid. Yeah. Yeah, if it's written by Joe Blow and he contradicts himself all over the place and he says, you know, purple is pink and pink is blue,
Well, I wasn't thinking
Yeah.
so much of the person who said it, but the person who was generating the inference in their mind.
Yeah, but how you generate that influence is by testing the validity of the scripture. Yeah, and so there are criteria that you look at to make sure the scripture is valid. One is that the person who spoke it doesn't contradict themselves in the scripture again and again. A second is that what they say doesn't contradict, things that you know that are obviously true. Okay? Yeah. Another is that they don't contradict things that you know through inference. Yeah. Okay. So that gives you some feeling that what that scripture says is true, because you may not understand that statement in it, but other things that scripture has said you can ascertain are true. So then you kind of take that leap of faith that, if all these other things have been true, then you can rely, the person who's saying it is valid and the rest of the things there are true. But if you come across something that you can refute, like His Holiness always says, Vasubandhu's description of the world is flat, then, even though it's in a scripture, you can refute it. So you do. Yeah, scriptural, you don't use reasoning by scriptural authority then, because it's failed some of the criteria of being a valid scripture.
I guess I was just having a hard time thinking that could get beyond, for the experience of the person having it, beyond like a correct assumption. But they call it an inference. Yeah, they call it an inference.
So I think to do that, you would really have to know the teachings quite well, for most of us, even what we think are our inferences are basically correct assumptions. But they're going in the right direction, and we're using some reasoning and we're getting to right conclusions. Yeah, our conclusions may not have eliminated all of our doubts. Yeah, but we're certainly going in the right way, and we can trust that.
Doesn't know where experiential wisdom comes in?
Yeah,
You have to look at it once you make a decision, right?
Well, that's what I was saying, that you validate a scripture if it doesn't also contradict anything you know by your own valid experience. Yeah? Okay, so that's why, the description of the world as flat, can be contradicted. Although, we depend on the scientists to contradict that. Our own eyesight and so on, really can't do that. We can't see the roundness of the world. We can talk to our friends in India and they say that it's, it's daytime now, but we're taking their word for it and inferring that therefore the world is round.
You can actually see it.
Actually, you can see it.
We can't see the roundness of the world. We only see the horizon.
Your view is 13 miles. Say that. So go mark it.
Yeah.
Something you can see it. Go that way, the opposite will disappear.
Yeah.
No, it's not flat.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah, but you could, somebody might think it's just flat, but you can't see past that. Yeah. That's what people in the past thought, isn't it? Yeah, most cultures thought the world was flat for an awful long time, and I'm sure they walked those 13 miles and then walked another. So, how they thought, well, it's round.